So it is freezing outside at the time of filming this. It is like 5 degrees, single digits. And I don't remember the last time it's been quite that cold. But before we begin, let me ask you a question. Are there any people in your life that when you first met, you did not like them at all? In fact, you thought there is no way in heck that they are going to ever be your friends, but now they're maybe some of your closest friends. Or maybe they didn't like you when they first met you. They thought you were rude or annoying or stuck up or whatever it was, but they had their reasons to not like you. Or maybe they just didn't understand you. They didn't understand your story. They didn't realize that there was more to you. And once they got to know you a little bit better, they spent some time with you, eventually they came around to the idea of you. And now, those are some of your best friends. The reality is that's a pretty common thing that happens to a lot of people. And that's actually kind of along the lines of what we're going to be talking about today. Because the reality is, there are some topics that we've possibly all had some impressions or opinions about. The way that we see things, maybe we're slightly off or twisted or just plain wrong. There's more that we need to understand. There's more to the story. And there are topics that you expect to talk about in church, right? Topics like prayer, reading your Bible, love. That makes sense, right? And then there are things that you really don't expect to talk about when you come to church, like MMA fighting or Harry Styles or streaming content on Twitch or how to get more TikTok followers, right? You don't come to church, you don't come to this platform to learn those things or talk about those things. Well, today we're going to talk about Twitch streaming. No, I'm just kidding. But we are going to talk about a topic that you probably don't expect to talk about in church. And that is the topic of porn. Maybe you're surprised that I just came out and said it. Maybe you've been around me long enough to know that it's really not that big of a deal for me to talk about. Or maybe you just roll your eyes because you're like, this is not even a big deal. Stop making it weird, right? And I'm still making it weird. But whether or not you think that porn is a problem or not, here are a few things that you should know. Depending on what kind of music you listen to, you hear references that are somewhat pornographic on a pretty consistent basis. It doesn't seem like a big deal when artists like Cardi B rap about it or when a comedian jokes about it. So why is it such a big deal that I'm talking about it? Secondly, if you watch TV or movies, Netflix, Hulu, you've probably seen things that could be labeled as porn. Just because it wasn't on an X-rated website doesn't mean that it didn't have undertones of porn or pornographic imagery. I'm not saying that to make you just feel guilty. I'm just trying to make my point that this topic isn't as foreign and far away as you may think. The average age of exposure to pornography nowadays is 11 years old. So we're talking about something that is already affecting someone around you. By no means am I assuming that all of you have had encounters with porn. I'm just making a point that it is a preteen thing, a teenage thing, and an adult thing. This affects everyone on the planet who has an internet connection. And if something affects everyone on the planet, then I feel like it's probably necessary to talk about it. So if you're new to church and a little shocked that we're talking about this, I get it. Don't worry, we'll get back to topics like praying and reading the Bible soon enough. But listen, I know that this topic isn't easy. There's something that I would love for all of you to get today. It's not that we're just affected by porn, we're actually influenced by porn. Here's what I mean. This is not something that could potentially tempt some of us. This is not something that just affects some of us. This is something that influences all of us. Why? Because porn culture is all around us. Snapchat, sexting, movies, music, advertisements, conversations, apps. It's all everywhere. Plus, the porn industry generates about $12 billion every year. That's more than the combined annual revenues of ABC, NBC, and CBS. It's around us all the time, and it's impossible to spend time around something and not be affected by it at all. When it comes down to it, porn is sexualized content designed to get a specific response. A lot of people start watching porn because they're curious, so it's kind of like sex education. The problem is that porn was never designed to educate you. It was designed to hook you and to make you addicted. It was designed to be manipulative. We're being influenced by something that's teaching us a fake education. And what's interesting is that you and I are typically quick to see right through things that aren't legit. For example, how many of you love McDonald's? All right, no one's mad at you if you do, and no one's mad if you don't. If you don't, just pretend it's Wendy's or Burger King or whatever. But let's say that a McDonald's manager came in here and started talking about eating healthy. And he or she talked maybe only about eating things like Big Macs and nuggets and McFlurries. None of you would fall for it. You'd see right through it. You'd be like, why are we allowing this person to teach us about healthy nutrition? Going to porn is like going to McDonald's to eat healthy. It would have adverse effects. Going to porn for sex or sex education is the exact same thing. It has adverse effects and it can actually hurt you. The truth is that there's more to the story when it comes to this topic of pornography, and that's what we're going to take the next few minutes to talk about. There's a book in the Bible called Proverbs, and the Bible is actually, it's a collection of books. It's split into two sections. We got the Old Testament, we got the New Testament, which basically just means that the Old Testament was books before Jesus' time, and the New Testament was Jesus and after. And Proverbs is in the Old Testament. It's kind of like poetry, but it's like wise sayings. And they were wise sayings primarily from Solomon, who is known as like the wisest guy ever to live. But what does an ancient king have to say about our lives today that would be wise, that would apply to our lives, because the world is so much different today than it was then? Ironically enough, not a whole lot has actually changed about human nature or about the human condition. We all still kind of respond to the same things. We all kind of still have the same motives. We all still kind of struggle with the same basic things as we did then. And so when it comes to life, Solomon actually had some pretty wise things that are applicable to us even today. For example, the verse that we're going to look at today says this: "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." Proverbs 14:15. Simple is basically naive. For example, a simple person believes everything they read online. They think every science experiment works like they've seen on TikTok. They fall for any prank because they're easily tricked. They're gullible. They believe anything. And when it comes to porn, maybe you've heard or thought of statements like this, that it's not hurting anyone. There are worse things I could be doing. I'm not doing anything. I'm just looking, right? Or at least I'm not actually having sex with a real person, right? We've been naive when it comes to porn. We've believed everything. But hear this: porn never tells the whole story. Look, psychologists have studied human sexuality for a long time. The point of sexuality is intimacy. And there are three basic components to intimacy. There's a physical component, there's an emotional component, and there's a spiritual component. You cannot separate the physical and emotional components around sex. This is a psychologically and physiologically proven reality. The hormones released in the brain during a sexual encounter create emotional attachment. There's no getting around this. This is the reality of sexuality. The emotional and the spiritual components of your relationship with someone lays the groundwork for the intimate physical component. Then it's a cycle that just keeps strengthening the other components. And if you don't have an emotional or spiritual component, relationship built on trust and commitment, i.e. marriage, but you jump into the physical component, you cheat yourselves out of the emotional and spiritual bond that God designed sex to create. The emotional and spiritual component strengthen the sexual component, and then the physical sexual component then reinforces and strengthens the emotional and spiritual components. It's just this cycle that goes over and over again. Porn never tells the whole story. It only tells the physical component and sells the idea of ultimate pleasure. It doesn't tell the part of the story where your hard work in the kitchen contributed to the emotional affection of your partner. The part of the story where your conversation in a difficult moment built up and gave life to your partner. The part of the story where your guard was down and your partner saw the real you, but chose to love you anyway. The part of the story where after sex you continue to serve and take care of your family and their needs. There's more to the story than the one that porn tells. Speaking of parts of the story that porn doesn't tell, there's actually a website called fightthenewdrug.org. They're a secular organization. They have nothing to do with Christianity, but they reinforce these same truths. And they've compiled decades of studies from respected institutions about pornography and the effects that they have on people in their relationships. Their website has assembled over 1,000 pornography-related articles, and here's some of the research facts that they've discovered. Studies have found that porn use is correlated with less sexual and relational satisfaction. Porn use is correlated with intimacy problems. Frequent exposure to pornography is associated with less interest in having a sexually exclusive relationship with a partner. Frequent exposure to pornography is associated with the belief that marriage is sexually confining and that having children and family is not a good idea. The sex acts shown in pornography are unrealistic and often abusive. Even moderate porn use is correlated with damage to parts of the brain involved with motivation and decision making. Compulsive pornography users are at risk for depression and stress. When adolescents, both male and female, are exposed to sexual media, they are more likely to have stronger notions of women being sex objects. Pornography makes violence appear sexy. Porn doesn't tell you the facts like this when you look at it. It wants you to be distracted and it wants you to be addicted. It doesn't want you to have a full, complete life. Consider this. Porn will not make you better at sex. It might actually make you worse because it damages your relationships. And as we know, sex is relational, not physical. Anyone who tells you otherwise is a simpleton. Secondly, porn will not make sex better for you. It will actually make it less desirable because it doesn't give you a realistic expectation of sex. Thirdly, porn will not help you understand what sex is like. It will actually confuse you and lead you further away from understanding it. God isn't against porn because he thinks that the act of sex is bad. He's anti-porn because pornography has twisted what he intended sex to be. He is anti-porn because it devalues people that he cares about, which is everyone. He's anti-porn because it's bad for you and it's bad for others. God is a 100% loving God, and there's absolutely nothing loving about pornography because pornography kills love. The second part of that verse that we read says this: "The prudent give thought to their steps." This means that a person evaluates information carefully so that they don't have to fall into a trap. And that's exactly what porn is. It's a trap. It's a trap that wants something from you: time, attention, money, addiction. And in exchange, it gives you a false sense of sexual closeness. Culture doesn't tell you that because they don't even see it themselves. A prudent person is basically someone who's wise. And many, many years after Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament, a man named Paul who wrote a letter to the church in Ephesus, and it's recorded in the New Testament. Here's what he said in that letter. He said, "Be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise." When Paul says be very careful, it's similar to Solomon saying give thought to your steps. Don't believe everything you hear. Porn never tells the whole story. When you're being manipulated, step the other way. Be prudent. Be wise. Get yourself away from something that is so destructive. It would be crazy for someone to teach us about being healthy from a menu at a fast food restaurant, right? We need to see right through it. We need to have the same mentality when it comes to porn culture. There are a lot of steps that we could all take, but for the sake of today, we're only going to focus on 2. 1, refuse to be fooled. Train your brain. When you see the ad or the Snapchat, argue with it, question it. What is this trying to sell me, and what is it trying to convince me to do? All of you are almost adults. Some of you are 18 already. You're smart. You see through so many things that are fake or manipulative. You have to access those same smarts when it comes to porn culture. Remember, it's everywhere and it wants something from you. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't want what's best for you. It wants to trap you. So be wise, be smart, and be careful. Secondly, refuse to participate. Create a plan to set yourself up for success before you even reach the trap. Think ahead. What will you do when you come across pornographic content or tempted to believe the lies of porn culture? How will you put a stop to this manipulation? Sometimes it isn't enough to just know that you're being tricked. You need help to get unmanipulated. Maybe you need to take concrete action and put some pretty hefty restrictions on the access to your technology. If an industry makes $12 billion a year, you can believe that it's very persuasive and convincing, and they spend a lot of money figuring out how they can best get your attention. So remember the trap. Remember that it's possible to get out of the trap, but sometimes not always possible by yourself. So talk to your small group leader or someone that you trust when it comes to this. Maybe you need to confess some things, get some things off your chest, but look for accountability. And don't feel like you have to be alone when it comes to fighting against this industry. None of us wants to be a part of something that manipulates us. We don't want to associate with something that hurts us or hurts others. We're smart and we don't want to be controlled. But porn culture is sneaky, and now that we've named it, we can open our eyes, see it for what it is, and step the other way. And imagine if we did. How liberating would it be to move forward without being trapped by something that's so destructive to so many people? We would hurt ourselves and others a lot less, and that's a pretty big deal. Porn never tells the whole story. On the other hand, we have a God who loves us immensely, and out of his love for us, he wants good things for us. He wants to see us thrive, not suffer. Porn is hurtful and damaging. God wants better for us. He has given us incredible minds to see through the lies and the incredible wills to walk away. So choose wisdom, be proactive, be willing to have hard conversations. This is worth the fight.